thank you all so much for coming. This is the sort of inaugural event of this new program of Mountain Cloud, Original Love. And yeah, it's sort of for me personally, it's quite a kind of big thing, really, big evening for me, because this program has been kind of brewing and developing in me for, some time, actually, maybe a year or more. But then on the other hand, maybe it's really more like 40 years. I feel it's kind of the fruit of a lot of practice and a lot of training and a lot of teaching from my teachers, my marvelous teachers, Joan Rick Roshi, John Gaynor Roshi, Ruben Abedul Roshi, Ryoan Roshi, Yamada Roshi, and many others, actually, guides and mentors and so on. And so I hope you're going to have a good evening as you're introduced to the sort of concepts and the practices that come together in this course. Let's see, some little bits of housekeeping. You can chat, if you like. You can use the chat. It's going to be open. Be nice if you do. If you're friendly greetings and so on are greatly appreciated. But unmuting won't be possible until we get to the Q&A part of the evening. And I'm going to say a little bit more about that in a moment. The plan for tonight is like this. Very shortly, we'll go into a first sit, which will be 25 to 30 minutes long. Then we're going to have a short break. And then after the short break, I'll offer a talk. And after the talk, we'll have Q&A. And at that point, you'll be able to raise your hand and unmute. And Katie will give some little bit of instruction on that when we get there. So that's the plan. We're going to dive right in shortly. But let me just really, please bear with me. I want to thank some people who've helped make this come together. And so that is Katie Rader, Mark Petrick, who's actually sitting with me right now, who's done all kinds of fantastic tech assistance for us and other kinds of assistance in a great way. Jeremy Riesenfeld, who's on, has been helping in many, many ways. And Johanna Sindelar, as always, helping behind the scenes, our chief administrator at Mountain Cloud. Sandra, our board chair. Sandra Burns, Sanjiv Manifest, many kinds of help from him, and Rachel Belash, our executive director. All have been most helpful in making this come together. So, lastly, before we start, I'd like to just let you know that following on from this event tonight, next Monday, we're starting a 3-week course on Original Love. And that's going to be 3 Mondays, consecutive Mondays, starting actually not at 6 like tonight, but 6:30 Mountain Time, July 26th, August 2nd, August 9th. Following that, we're going to have a weekend retreat. That's the 14th and 15th of August, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Mountain Time each day. And you can attend the 3-week course, you can attend the weekend retreat, or you can attend both. I hope very much you might feel inclined to do that. And if you can't make it live to any of those events, we'll be sending out recordings of all the classes shortly after each session. And there'll be a supplemental practice video that comes emailed to you in between each class to help reinforce some of the class material. And Katie will be including a link to register for both of those in the Zoom chat. Okay, so now let's come into a comfortable seated position for meditation. You're welcome to either have your eyes closed or have your eyes open with the gaze lowered. I'll give you a moment just to get settled and comfortable. Okay. So let's begin by finding our balance. You might find it helpful to, if your eyes are open, bring your focus right into the body, right into the seat that you're sitting on. Feel your weight being transferred down into the seat. And if your eyes are closed, you'll maybe find that easier to tune into right away, but it can be done with eyes open, of course, as well. So let's have a little gentle rock back and forth. As long as your back is free, it's fine if your back is supported by a chair, just remain there. But if you're sitting free, gently rocking back and forth, feeling where the balance point is, going just behind it and just in front of it, letting the movement get smaller until you feel you can come to rest right there where you are balanced. You may find that a little spinal adjustment is in order. Maybe we want to have the spine basically straight and upright. That often includes a little bit of lumbar arch. So a little bit of a concave lower spine. So that's to say the lumbar spine is just a little bit forward to moving towards the navel. Don't overdo it. It's just enough to bring the natural kind of suspension to the spine. And over that, the shoulders are settling. And over the shoulders, the head is resting right at the top of the spine, right between the shoulders. Head is comfortably kind of roosting like a bird in the evening. Sort of tail feathers out back. Body sort of plumped up a little bit. There's a nice sweet spot for the skull. See if you can find it. Now, if you would, imagine that there's a little hook somewhere in the top rear part of your skull. So if you imagine the crown of the head, come just behind that. Imagine a little hook that has a little subtle thread attached to it, gently hoisting, pulling us into alignment. Maybe that the back of the neck lengthens a little bit. It may bring a tiny little micro rotation forward into the head. That's fine. And allow that thread to hold you up, meaning that beneath it, everything's free to relax. Face relaxes. Sort of something like a sail unfurling, sort of drooping towards the deck of the ship, as it were. All the muscles in the face releasing. The ears are balanced and settled. and beneath them the hinges of the jaw soft, releasing. So the jaw itself sinks a little bit, maybe just a 16th of an inch. The lower jaw sags. And that right away brings a softness into the throat. And also into the shoulders. And the arms dangle, they're limp like old ropes. Chest also soft, kind of warm and melting. And let that melting warmth ease its way down through the middle of the trunk, into the upper belly and the lower belly and the seat, and on down through upper legs, knees, lower legs, ankles, and feet. So the whole body now is upright and at ease. There's a kind of spreading ease throughout the body. And with it, we notice there's also a kind of awareness that is able to hold a sense of the whole body. So the whole body is, as it were, wrapped, enveloped in a kind of easy, embracing, warm awareness. And it's at ease. There's a quality of rest which is very helpful in meditation. But it's an unusual kind of rest in a sense because it has a wakefulness, a watchfulness right in it as part of it. See if you can sense this kind of alive awakeness. That's sort of intrinsic to the restfulness we're switching on in the body. And just let yourself be with it a moment. We're starting to taste the flavor of stillness. The flavor of learning to unplug from our busy doing and instead be, just be. We don't really want to think of meditation quite as another activity. It's more like a release from activity. It's sort of akin to a stone just being a stone. Or a mountain being a mountain. We're tuning into the way Our body knows how to be a body. We might notice that the breath is coming and going. Let it come and go as it wants. It can get quite gentle, sort of soothing. Don't try to do anything particular with the breath. Just observe it as you would observe seaweed in the ocean stirring back and forth as waves come and go. That more gentle kind of movement that can happen in a large body of water like the ocean. A stirring back and forth. Let your breath be something like that. A stirring back and forth that you're aware of within the sensory field, the field of sensations of your body. And if you feel a note or two of gratitude for your breath, that's great. Just remembering how the breath is our most essential lifeline. Our life begins with a breath, an in-breath, and it ends with an out-breath. And all the way along, all through our life, here this lifeline is, making our life here and now, breath by breath. The movement of the breath being part of a great ocean, washing into us and out of us. And really, this could be the primary sort of content of a meditation, either just sitting in stillness, tasting stillness, being with stillness, or letting our awareness flow with the breath, back and forth, in and out of the energy field of the body. perhaps with gratitude. If you're finding yourself sinking into deeper presence this way, that's wonderful. If there's any sort of snag in the body, if there's something just a little bit not at ease in the body, let's bring that into our awareness and soften around it. So if you're finding some trace of, say, restlessness or any kind of obstacle to settling, let's be aware of it. Let's see if we can locate it in the body and soften. Let the tissue, the fabric of the body soften around it. We are seeking to be able to allow whatever it is, find a way to soften around it so it becomes part of our sitting, part of the meditation, not something that is intruding, something that is welcome. So just seeing if you can soften and welcome anything that you're sensing by way of any kind of discomfort. Softening and allowing. And if you're not finding anything uncomfortable, that's just fine, of course. But just notice what the absence of it feels like, of the absence of anything uncomfortable. Let yourself be with how it feels for that to be absent. Of course, thoughts may come and go. That's simply no problem at all. If we've been caught up by some train of thought, as soon as we realize it, wonderful. We note that we've been thinking. We might just check out what kind of thinking was it, for example, planning, or was it memories or fantasies? We might just apply one of those labels. Most thoughts tend to be planning, memories, fantasies. Label and then come back to just being here with gratitude that we have returned. We're present again. Congratulations to ourselves on coming back to here and now. Once again, savoring rest that is alert, attentive, awake. Perhaps once again flowing with the breath, letting it sift through us, in and out, gently, smoothly. And in the last few minutes, you might see what it's like to pull a little smile into your face. Just let a sort of half smile just come into your face, sort of like a bloom. Just see how that feels, what difference that might make to your sitting. It's just an experiment. Still gently tracking the breath, or just basking in stillness. And if it feels like there's some kind of unease of any kind that needs tending, soften around it, allow it, be kind with it, to it, be kind to yourself. Meditation is a space that can, in the end, hold all of us. Nothing need be excluded at all. It's a broad, loving welcome that is the sort of primal condition of meditation. Allow yourself to be touched by that great welcome. It welcomes all of us, not just past parts that we think are acceptable. No, it's a broad space. The very same awareness that we maybe sense through our bodies, that too is a broad, broad awareness. See if you can open up the windows and doors of your body right now in the last minute and feel awareness opening up to the space around you. Perhaps the room you're in, maybe even beyond the room. Awareness really has no bounds. And that great breadth is part of its secret capacity to allow all of us to hold all in a kind of love. Okay, so coming to the end of the sit, so feel free as you like to maybe move fingers and toes and move the body around in other ways, and maybe you want to stretch, whatever feels good. And don't rush. You know, if you're deep in your sitting and you want to just keep sitting, by all means. But this would be a time to gently move, and we're going to have a 5-minute break right now. So if you want to go and get a cup of tea or glass of water or anything like that, this is a moment to do it, and we'll reconvene in 5 minutes. Okay, so now I'm going to try my best to sort of convey to you what this whole thing is about, original love. As many of you know, I'm basically a Zen teacher, and I've been practicing Zen, to the best of my ability for a long, long time. But I've also done other kinds of practice, various kinds and various kinds of therapy. And in a way, this program is, I really feel my hope anyway is that it's kind of the fruit of all those things. First of all, why is it called original love? Basically, this is where the sort of the core of it comes from. Is that in Zen and in the Zen lineage that I'm trained in, Sambo Zen, which is in some ways a modern lay, stripped down form of Zen, but also in a certain way quite traditional, also in the core of what it's aiming to sort of do for us and bring to us. In it, there's a pivotal experience it knows human beings can go through. We people can go through this really quite extraordinary experience. It's really a discovery about who we are, that the way we've constructed our sense of self and what we've lived by as that self, for most of us, for most of our lives, it's not the whole story. There's sort of, in a sense, more to us, and also in a certain sense, less to us. But that less is very, very good. And in Zen, this experience is called Kensho, which translates as seeing original nature. Now, when we have a glimpse of that original nature of ourselves, of this very moment here and now, it's not some sort of other realm. It's this moment, this very moment, but seen in a different way, in a much, much broader way, a sort of wide open kind of way. When we have a glimpse of that, it's called, as I say, the seeing your original nature, but it has certain sort of effects on us to have that, to make that discovery. And amongst them, one is a sense that we belong to everything, that we are truly part of everything, not as an idea, but as a lived, felt experience. We are not separate. And to feel, to taste that always seems to bring a sense of belovedness. It's not a kind of inert experience that doesn't touch us. It's not like, oh, now I've discovered that. No, it's a very profound thing for us because we're part of it, part of all. So we feel it as love. Okay, now that's my little riff on original nature. It's original love. Okay, so that's where that comes from. I guess in a certain sense, in the back of my mind somewhere, when I was starting to use this phrase, I did have, a converse notion in mind as well, which was the old Abrahamic notion of original sin. And I know it's a complex doctrine, and there's people much wiser and better versed in these things tell me there's a lot to it that I don't understand. I'm sure that's right. I mean, in original sin. But this original love is what I know as the sort of most important aspect of being human. In a way, if we discover that, everything else can start to fall into place. It's not like usually it's the end of training, but it's a pivotal experience. Now, here's the thing. Great. I mean, that all sounds nice, really, in a sense, doesn't it? But the problem is actually that it's not that, it's not 100% predictable. It's not 100% inducible, this experience of Kensho. It's it's not just down to us to, oh, I think I'm going to do a bit of awakening, because another term for it is awakening. We don't just decide, I'm going to do some awakening now, and boom, it happens. It's not like that. Some of us sit long, long stretches of time, and we don't know how long before this grace lands on us and opens us up in that way. So, so here's point one, is that actually we can, there are various kinds of growth that happen in meditation. Awakening is not the only one. Not only are there other kinds, they're important. So let me now introduce another little concept that I came across in a footnote to a very nice book on early Buddhism in China called the Bodhidharma Anthology. There's a reference in that to, it's a book about some, basically it's about some documents that have only been found in the 20th century, in a great trove of documents that were found in a cave in Dongguan in China. And scholars have been slowly working their way through this vast trove of documents. And so, I mean, over decades, they're slowly more and more coming to light. And maybe 2 or 3 decades ago, something came to light. There was a document that likened practice, the path of meditative growth, to being like a cart track. And a cart track has 2 ruts, one for each wheel. A cart has 2 wheels, maybe it has 4, but anyway, it's got to have 2. So each wheel needs a rut. So this idea is that the cart track of the path of practice, the track of practice, has 2 ruts. Rut 1, actually, you could take it either way, really, but because of what I've been saying, I'm now calling it track 1. Rut number 1, awaken. It's the original nature. It's the thing that's always here, can't not be here, showing up as this very moment right now. It's here already. But because, many of us just don't see it and don't easily open to it, there's another track. Track number 2, rut number 2, same track, rut number 2. And that in this document is known as the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Well, the 4 foundations of mindfulness is a direct reference to an early sutra, the Satipatthana Sutta, from early Buddhist canon, the Pali canon. And it's the basic sort of manual for mindfulness practice that is in the Pali. That's the early body of literature, of sutras. I mean, initially they were oral, got written down at some point and have come down to us. The 4 foundations of mindfulness is a sort of core teaching on practice. And so this document, the 2 rut track, is saying you've got 2 ruts that are needed. One is this fact, principle, basic fact of awakened nature, that we awaken to when we awaken. But the other is the path of mindful growth. It's a growth. It's a gradual cultivation. Track 2 is gradually growing. Track 1 is, you sort of, because it's already true, it's already here, it's not exactly a path of growth. It's a fact. Track 2 is a path of growth. Now, basically, what I've come to feel, having practiced in various ways myself, various traditions, is that really this second track, the growth, the gradual cultivation track, as we sort of develop in it, all along the way, are key moments of sort of opening, of shifts that happen to us, of kinds of growth that happen. They're always in some way, they always have, those moments always have in some way, some kind of love in them. For example, if we're dogged by some difficult mood that we can't shake off very easily, we're meditating, maybe wisely, in hopes of help with that. Um, the pivotal sort of little shifts that can happen with it, they always seem to have some flavor of our attitude to what we've identified as a problem shifting from one of basically rejecting or resisting to softening, opening, allowing, and that then brings in a kind of love that we find that the parts of us that we had been resisting and not wanting and which show up in meditation, actually the the very resisting of them was part of the problem. And instead, when we learn somehow, against all our natural inclinations, really, when we learn to love it, we feel we ourselves are also loved, and it all softens. And then whatever we wanted not to be there actually has a chance to change and move and flow, and we grow. And that's how this second track works, the path of growth and of mindfulness. Now, what I've done in this program is I've sort of identified what I feel are sort of, let me say, four primary sort of areas of growth that we need to attend to as practitioners, as people on the path of growth through meditation. And in each of these four zones, the process that I've just described is pertinent. But actually, it's not really just that. Even I've come to sense that, this so called original nature, or may I say original love, is present in each of these four zones. And my feeling is that to neglect any of them, I mean, for example, to focus exclusively on track one, awakening, actually, it may not be so wise. It may be that we really need somehow also to be growing in these other dimensions. And this program, Original Love, is about tending to a broader basis of areas of practice, to have a more balanced and whole path of practice. And I'd say, I'm going to go into it just briefly in a moment in a bit more detail. But, broadly speaking, another way perhaps we could think of it is that however much, we may like sort of the notion of awakening, and, there's a lot of talk about it today in the zeitgeist. It's, it's quite remarkable, really, if you think about, 60 years ago, 70 years ago, really any of this kind of stuff I've just been talking about for 50 minutes would have been unthinkable in the West. It just wasn't really on the radar. And now there's millions of people meditating. I mean, really millions in the US alone. And there's and of those millions, quite a significant number have cottoned on to this awakening business. Whether they're finding it through, non-dual practice, through sort of the sort of higher stages of mindfulness practice, through Zen, and so on. The Vedic forms of practice, Advaita, and so on. That people, we know now that there is this possibility of, often it's described as sort of seeing through the sense of self. But we know about it, and there are paths of practice that are, really widely available now that sort of target it. That's a fantastic thing. But let's not forget these other dimensions of growth, because to my mind, what these other zones I'm about to get into, what they represent really is basically about healing. So I feel that a short summary of this two rut cart track would be to say that really we might think that there are two paths. There's a path of awakening and there's a path of healing. And of course, like therapy and many, many ways of approaching healing. And mindfulness has a place, very definitely, in a process of healing, on a path of healing. But what if the path of healing and the path of awakening really, in the end, are one path? And it's wrong somehow to think of awakening in the absence of healing. And at the same time, if our path of healing isn't aware of this possibility of this profound discovery, profound sort of layers of discovery that we can make sort of about who we really are, if the path of healing isn't aware of those, again, something's kind of missing even on that side as well, because the greatest healing of all probably is what we discover in awakening, that we're inseparable. Where there's one inseparability. We cannot be alone. That's in some sense, the ultimate healing. And that would also be a description of awakening. And yet, if we don't have other tools or other sort of awareness really in our practice, other kinds of growth, other kinds of opening and healing, perhaps awakening is sort of not quite enough for most of us. So my plea, it really is that, and this is the deep sort of purpose of this original love program, is to bring together, to make it clear that healing and awakening are sort of both needed. And my hunch, deep hunch really, is that ultimately they're one path, really. But for purposes of us ailing humans like myself, it's helpful to sort of have, a sense of, well, there's this and there's this. It helps us. So here we go on this path of original love. On the healing side, let me say that what are the four zones that I feel are really pertinent for us to know about. This is, I can't go into great detail here. I'm just giving you kind of an overview, so you have a sense of what on earth Henry's talking about with this original love business. Okay, so the first zone, if I can call it that, the first area of growth is basically, what would fall under modern mindfulness practice, essentially. It's learning to inhabit our body, to come home to the body, to not be so caught up in the mind, in thought loops so habitually. Habits of thought generate habits of feeling, and actually habits of feeling generate habits of thought as well. So we're learning to come into the body, to be less prisoners of our minds, to be less what's the word, captivated, entranced by our minds, but also by our habits of feeling. It's very easy for us to get into patterns of emotion. I've certainly done it a lot in my life. And so this sort of basic mindfulness, really helps us to become more aware of thinking, and also to become aware of tension patterns in the body, and to learn how to soften them and release them. And this is sort of essential, I feel, for our sort of basic psychological growth. personal and interpersonal. It's I feel, I mean, for somebody who's, still working on it, it's about emotional maturity, coming into greater emotional maturity. So we're sort of less at the mercy, basically, of our emotions. And we're less buffeted about by what Buddhism calls the 8 winds, which we'll get into down the road. Very helpful to develop more sort of stability of mind and heart. And this more open heart, more welcoming heart is actually more stable. The winds can blow through it. It's not so liable to topple one way or the other when a strong breeze comes along, So this is very, very important. We really can't overlook that, actually, and hope to be a sort of a wiser human being. Somehow it's part of our growth and growth in wisdom. I speak as somebody not setting myself up as wise, but I hope on the path toward greater wisdom. I feel I can claim that. I hope I compared to way back when, or even not so long ago, I think I can say this path I've been following of healing and awakening has brought greater wisdom in that sort of regard. At least I'm working on it. So that's zone 1. Zone 2, and I think this is very important for modern day and age Westerners, it's about support. Zone 2 is learning to open up to support. Now, you might think, well, that's not really part of practice, or that's not really part of meditation or something, but it is. One of the sort of, along with all the fantastic benefits of the modern, sort of, kind of a, spreading sort of forest fire, so to speak. And sorry, that's not a great analogy right now, but the spread of mindfulness and practice in modern culture, modern society, with apps. It's fantastic, really. The very device that's terrible for our sustained attention, the iPhone or smartphone, actually now can be a sort of smuggling in really good habits as well through mindfulness apps. It's fantastic, So, but the thing is, it can encourage a sense that our practice, this, which is a really deep undertaking with potential to radically transform our lives, but the way that we are adopting it so much in the West can spread the idea, the notion that it's a solo activity. It's a bit like going to the gym and lifting weights, but I do it for my mind. I on my own, I have to train, I have to practice. It's true that, we do have to do our time on the cushion or in the chair. We have to, in our time with walking meditation, and, you can lie down meditating, by the way, as well. That's perfectly fine. I hope some of you actually are really comfortable while I'm giving this talk. You might be lying down. It's fine. It's great. Be comfortable. If you're at all uncomfortable now in your body, make it comfortable, please. But, actually, we really need to know that this practice we're doing throughout its long history, thousands of years of known history and thousands before of unknown history, prehistory, it's always had seems to have always had some sense that it's not a solo activity. You need support. And that support, traditionally in the Buddhist framework, has been known as the 3 treasures. Actually, that's the name of the Zen lineage I'm part of. San-bo means 3 treasures. And the 3 treasures are a Buddha, which is sort of a Buddha, the example, the person who meditated. So we do that, we meditate, right? That's it. Dharma, meaning guidance. Second treasure is guidance. And it's okay that be sometimes, a YouTube video. It's fine. It's fine that it be that. But in the end, if we want to go sort of, somewhat more deeply down the path, we need to interact with a live person somewhere along the way. We need that sort of guidance that's for us, that, we can bring our questions, and, because there's sort of specific tending rather than just generic as well is also needed. And Sangha means community, being among other people following the same path. That's actually also necessary. So there's support on that kind of level, being open to it. And there's becoming simply more aware of the infinite ways that our life is a dependency. Our life, our very existence here and now in this moment, is just dependent on an infinite variety of other things. We're made of all these other elements. And becoming more cognizant of that is so helpful, to realize that we're just sort of infinitely indebted. It's actually a great relief. So there's more to this second zone of support that we touch on. For example, there's sort of a more, what some would call, sort of archetypal kinds of support that we can open to as well. And we look at that a little bit on the course. So that's the second zone. Third zone. So excuse me, just checking my time here. Okay, third zone. Okay, we're moving along. Now, by the way, actually, just the second point, there's a point on that second zone. I mean, you can see probably already how love is pertinent. Opening to support is obviously learning to receive love, learning to let love in. I don't know, something in me feels that that may be the most important thing in a path of practice, is how do we let love in? Opening. What may there be in us that doesn't want to let love in? Because it's being given all the time somehow. Our very life is a gift of love. That's what I've come to feel. Okay, anyway, third zone is basically about, broadly speaking, what we call flow states. States of mind where the sense of self is less active. There's a lot of research on this. Many of you might have read about Csikszentmihalyi in the 70s doing his research on flow states and their connection with happiness. Well, meditation has its take on all this as well. In the meditation world, they're equivalent. There are flow states really pertinent. It's usually known as samadhi. And samadhi means, it's often translated as concentration, but that's a hopeless translation actually for us Westerners, because for us concentration means fixing the gaze on something. But this is not what samadhi means at all. Samadhi means sort of merging with this moment more than we normally do. I see it actually as basically what it feels like to me whenever samadhi switches on. And I'm happy to say the more you practice, the more samadhi does switch on, because it's a very pleasant state of mind. But there are little pointers and guidances that, I can offer. I hope I'm offering as we go about that. But it's like falling in love with the moment, falling in love with now. It always feels something like that. That somehow we're sort of falling in love with this moment. And sometimes it's like falling in love with the world. Actually, there's a beauty that we often sense in samadhi. A sense of beauty comes up in samadhi. It's samadhi is an astonishing state of mind. It's not to be confused with awakening, but it's pretty accessible. I think you can be guided to it, but it's so beautiful. It's so easy, and it's a discovery that we can have great well-being sitting in a room on your own. You actually can find a deep well-being in basically doing nothing and sort of not having very much. No extras needed. It's kind of a well-being with less, well-being with just basically body and mind and heart, deep well-being, falling in love with this moment. That's third zone. Okay, I'm speeding up a little bit here because of time. Fourth zone Well, actually, the fourth zone is actually the other track, the awakening track. That's the fourth zone. And the reason that we go into it a bit in this program, in this course, is because actually there are sort of different kind of flavors of awakening. It's very interesting to know that, and it's interesting to explore them. There are also different practices that can offer maybe not the sort of deep, powerful, life-changing sort of a lightning bolt of Kensho, but there are actually practices that can open us up to a non-dual sense of things. And so we explore those somewhat as well in this course, in this program. But because of the time, I'm going to have to just zip my mouth shut right there and not talk too much about awakening, which maybe is a little bit appropriate because you can't really, anything you say about awakening is somehow kind of wrong, because it's a state that's outside concepts. It's outside language. And so I'm going to pause right there and just hope that I've given you a sense of what this strange and I think really beautiful, I hope really beautiful course is all about. Original love. So Katie, I'm going to hand it over to you if I may. Let's sort of allow people, what I'd really like is if we can allow people to unmute. Actually, first, sorry, why don't Katie, why don't you take over? I might sort of be unclear. Is that okay?
Yeah, no problem. So so basically just 1 second. Let me pull it up. So as far as the Q&A section, I am going to turn on permissions for everybody to be able to unmute. So if you have a question, you can go ahead and just unmute if nobody is talking, or if you hit the reactions button at the very bottom of your Zoom screen, there's a raise hand tab. If you go ahead and hit that, Henry will know that you have your hand raised, and I can go ahead and call on people in order if there are multiple questions.
Fantastic. Thanks, Katie. Hey, I want to suggest that, Katie, could you sort of, if people raise their hand, could you unmute them? Could you do it that way around?
Yes, I can do that too.
Okay, that might be because you should see them. I think in your, they should come popping up on the first screen if you raise your hand. Anyway, that let's do it that way, and then people can speak, and I'll try to respond to questions. So please feel free to ask anything.
Henry, it looks like there's also a question in the chat.
Oh, okay, fine. Let's I'll take a look at that. Just a sec. Oh man, okay. I'll take that one. Let's start there. Anybody else just hit, do you know how to raise your hand, anybody else, if you want to ask a question? Okay, how to open to the suffering of your child. Well, I mean, first of all, I want to ask, can you not be open to the suffering of your child? Do you not feel the suffering of your child? I mean, it could be that a kid is acting out, in some ways, and that sort of pushes us away. But underneath that, if we know they're suffering, as a parent, I mean, I'm wondering whether, don't you feel it? Isn't it very painful, really, to feel that your child is in a bad way, has encountered some difficulty, and they don't know how to handle it, and they're suffering? Isn't that something that you feel very deeply? I'm going to assume that it is. And then the question becomes sort of, well, what do I do about the suffering of my child? And that's a big matter. And it can be quite contextual and circumstantial. It depends very much, in what way are they suffering? and what is that looking like? And but I mean, it's one of the hardest things for a parent. Is one of the hardest things in life is the suffering of our kids that inevitably happens, and it'll depend what age your child is. It'll depend a lot on their circumstances. I mean, my own experience with this teaches me that I mean, when there's a situation that's really sort of critical and in some ways, you know, sort of very, very challenging, sort of grievous, you know, it's finding our way to a wider trust. I mean, we must do what we can, of course, and sometimes we can't. We can't do as much as we would like. What then? You know, sometimes, alas, you know, we lose our children. Sometimes that happens. How do we? What can practice offer? How can practice help us? I mean, in some sense, maybe it can't exactly help us, but maybe it can. I mean, sometimes the only option is a kind of surrender and what I've called a wild trust. And practice can help us to find that wild trust and surrender. Sometimes that's all we can do. But you know, it's a huge area for exploration and for community, for togetherness, for feeling our way, groping and feeling our way to wisdom there, to helpful and wise responses. My heart goes out to you, whatever you're going through, whatever your child is going through. Okay, Katie, should we take another?
Looks like we have another question from Greg, so I'm going to go ahead and ask him to unmute.
Hello. Hi.
Hi, Greg.
So my question is more about the program and whether is the program focused more on meditation and talks, or is there going to be other exercises involved in the program, just to get a sense of what it entails?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, there's going to be meditation for sure, and there will be talks, and there'll be quite a bit of discussion. You know, long Q&A sessions, and there'll be video guidance that comes as well for basically for meditation. So I'd say sort of primarily meditation, but plenty of time for Q&A and discussion. Yeah. And in time there'll be a book actually that will come along, but the program initially will be basically like that. Yeah. Okay, thanks. Anybody, any other questions? Yeah.
I got a private message chat. The question is, are divination practices compatible with Zen training? They're sort of thinking like in the terms of astrology and tarot, if those are compatible sort of with the program.
100%. Basically, this kind of program is compatible with I mean, I feel almost virtually any other sort of practices you may have. I think it's compatible. Yes. One of the great things about this sort of training program is meditation and Zen, you know, is that they are they go with whatever we're doing in life. Really, they'll only help, I think. So yeah, let's see. Any other questions?
The first one I saw was from Shireen, so I'm going to unmute.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect. So my question is from your book, One Blade of Grass. There are several moments in that book where you say that a certain thought came to the top of your mind, especially during those moments. I think they're called docasans, where you're talking to your teacher.
Yeah.
I wonder if that moment occurs often outside of that setting, and if you could just talk more about that that experience of just like that one predominant thought, like you didn't even know you had this answer and it just came to you. Is this something?
Oh yeah.
Am I making sense?
Yes, you are. You are. Okay, good. I think, may I call it something like intuition, or sort of intuitive responses to things coming up more? Would that fit it, Shireen? Something like that, where a response or some sort of sort of notion about something comes not through sort of rational or logical thinking, but it just sort of arrives by itself. If I can take it that way, then I think meditation is one of the best possible trainings for intuition. In fact, Steve Jobs talked about this. He was a regular Zen practitioner. I think every day he meditated, and he said that it was by calming the mind, which you gradually do through meditation training. It just happens, that by doing that, you become more open to sort of deeper ideas. So projects, whatever they may be in life, can be greatly benefited by having this portion of stillness in every day, so that our intuition is more open and receptive. Definitely. Yeah. Okay, great. So let's take another, please. Great.
Hi there. Hi there, Henry.
Hi.
I've just got a practical question about the program. I'm dialing in from Australia, and I hear that you say that there will be quite an opportunity for Q&A. The timing is going to be quite difficult, but I was just wondering if there would be an opportunity afterwards or at some other point, or
great question. Yeah, great question. Actually, we'd already thought that we would, and people in awkward time zones can send in questions in advance that I can take on in the Q&As that we do. And then they'll be part of the recording that goes out. So that's one way we can handle that. Secondly, if you come to the weekend retreat as well, the timing is really different. And it just, hopefully, it might be more easier to handle. But everything's going to be recorded. Questions can be sent in advance so that you could get them that way. Okay, thank you very much for bringing that up. Okay, Katie, let's try to, I can see 3 other folks, so let's see if we can get everybody, if it's not too long questions.
All right, the next one that I saw up was Sarah.
Hello. I was hoping you could talk about the relationship between sometimes the push-pull involved in the discipline of practice, pushing to show up, make it happen, and then like just allowing the practice to be what it is. And if you could just speak to the relationship between those two ways of approaching practice.
Okay, thank you. Great question. What if I may, I'm just going to respond briefly this way by saying basically, one of the things that I hope will come from this is increased enjoyment of meditation. I really want to be helping everybody to actually have a good time meditating. That's one of the things that is a high priority for me. And maybe that in itself would resolve some of what you're talking about. But it's a very good point that we want to be, how we manage resistance is really important, and we'll be addressing that. Definitely, it's a big matter actually. Okay, great. So I know that's a short answer, but I don't want to keep everybody too late. So let's see last two folks, if we could hear what they are.
The next one is Chad.
Yeah.
Hello, Henry.
Hi.
You know, in meditation in general, and some of what I'm hearing in Original Love, obviously involves a great opening up to both yourself and other people as well. And I wonder if there's also some teaching to help balance that opening with not opening too much, if you will, and not becoming kind of a victim to the world and some of the bad actors and you know, unfortunate sides of reality.
Yeah. Okay, that's a great point. I would say very much so. As we sort of grow in practice, actually what we call boundaries, our personal boundaries, tend to get stronger, actually. We get clearer about our priorities. And that's very helpful. So even though it's sort of a, you know, awakening to all and all of that, at the same time, actually, it gives us a confidence in ourselves, because we're finding sort of a, you know, we're just getting to be more really who we are. And so there's growth on that side as well. So it does help with boundaries, I think is the word, you know. Okay, now let's just take one more question so we don't keep anybody too late. Thank you, Chad.
And then the last question is from Pete.
Okay.
Yeah, hopefully this will be an easy question to end with. I was just wondering if you could talk about just the design of the course, specifically kind of how the weekend component fits in with the rest. Is that like more of a session intensive kind of meditation period, or is that, I don't know, please talk about it.
Yeah, sure. So the 3 weeks are looking at each of the first 3 zones, and then when we get to the weekend, it's sort of, we touch on the 4th zone, awakening, then, and we bring it all together, because initially, you know, we're learning about these components of these areas of our growth, but ultimately we want to actually be able to sit and live in openness to all of them. They all work together, and the weekend will be starting to explore that. So it'll be a certain amount of meditation, certain amount of chat, certain amount of Q&A. I mean, by chat I mean talk, certain amount of Q&A, and some movement as well, body movement. And it'll be paced so that it's not like an intensive retreat where, you know, you got to be a real deep, you know, long time meditator already. No, it's going to be very manageable for relative novices of meditation that weekend. Okay, hope that's enough. Now, I'm going to just jump to sort of closing comment that, ding, 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 where are we? Yeah, I think just a reminder, the 3-week course, the weekend retreat, you can sign up at the link that I think Katie will put in the chat again, I think, or is already in the chat. And you can do one or the other or both. And you'll get, I hope, a sort of refresher if you're already a meditator. They'll bring a whole new lease of life to your practice. And if you're relatively new, I think it'll be a very good grounding. So I think that's just about it. Thank you all so much for coming. And really hope that you feel you've learned something from this evening that will be helpful for you. The recording will be coming out if you registered shortly in the next day or two, and looking forward to seeing as many of you as may be at next week with the course as it begins. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Katie.